Hello everyone, my name is Ashika Jain and I'm a third year student at the West Bengal National University of Juridical Sciences, Kolkata. I have been teaching logic at Catapult since the past 1 year, and today we are about to deal with one of the most important topics for critical reasoning in the CLAT, that is, assumptions. I say that this is one of the most important topics because, first, it is a much repeated topic in the CLAT as well as other competitive exams that you all will be taking, and also because it's one of the most subjective and most difficult to understand and crack topics of the CLAT. Again, why do I say that it's a difficult one? The reason is because it's a subjective topic. It requires you to go deep into the mind of the author who is making a certain statement, and it requires you to understand and analyze and basically identify what are the underlying assumptions that the author is making while making the statement. Now, say for example, if today I'm talking to you, what is my assumption? My assumption is that you guys are being able to understand me, you guys are being able to hear me, you guys are being able to comprehend what I'm trying to say and what I'm trying to communicate. So these are some of the underlying assumptions that I am making while talking to you. Now, if I tell you that, say for example, person X told me something, and then I tell you, what do you think are the assumptions in the mind of that person? Now, don't you realize that this is a very, very subjective thing and that the person might be thinking of something absolutely different, but yet saying something absolutely different? While this is very much possible, this chapter gives you a certain insight into how to deal with these underlying assumptions that any normal person makes while making certain statements. Without for much ado, let's just get to the topic. So this topic really has no concrete rule or no concrete algorithm like other analytical reasoning topics. The thumb rule for assumptions is simply one question that you need to ask yourself. What is there in the mind of the author? Now, while this might seem like a very simple thing to understand, and you'll be like, all right, fine, if the author is asking us to take an umbrella out when we go for a picnic, it probably means that the author is expecting for it to rain that day. It's not really that simple. This is because certain things, certain common daily life events that we all see and we all come across every day also have certain very, very basic assumptions underlying them. So say for example, one day you're sitting in front of the TV and the news channel is on. You see that the government, say the central government, has decided to increase the number of hospitals in the entire country. Have you ever thought what are the assumptions that the government is probably making when it's making that sort of statement? So the first assumption might be that, all right, fine, maybe the government is sure of the fact that it has the necessary infrastructure to create more hospitals. Does this seem like a valid assumption? Yes. Why do I say so? Because today, if I am claiming that let us make 100 hospitals in city X, just a hypothetical, say I'm saying that let's make 100 hospitals in city X, the underlying assumption is definitely the fact that yes, I have the money, I have the resources, I have the necessary cement, bricks, etc. I have the necessary number of doctors, nurses, personnel, managerial staff, all of these things that are required that I need to make 100 hospitals. This is a very, very basic assumption that can be there in the mind of any author who is making such a statement. Can another assumption, and I want you guys to think about it, can another assumption be something like, say, in each of those 100 hospitals, there are 500 beds. So can the government assume that all of these 500 beds will be required in, say, the 3 months of winter that are following that season? Absolutely not. Because this is not an assumption that any person will make when he claims that, say, let's build 100 new hospitals today. So you get the difference between the first and the second statement. It is something which very directly flows from the mind of the author. Yes, assumptions is not a very concrete topic. Yes, assumptions is not a very conclusive topic. You might have to make certain say subjective analysis while you're dealing with assumptions questions. You might have to maybe even go beyond the statement to understand what the author might be thinking. In one word, you essentially will have to read between the lines. When we say reading between the lines, we basically mean to go beyond what is written in the mere text of the statement and to actually understand what the author is trying to say and what is there in his mind. With this background, let's deal with assumptions questions. The first example. So this is a typical assumptions question that you'll come across for the CLAT or, as I said, for the competitive exams. Read the directions properly. In each question below, a statement is given. It is followed by two assumptions. You consider the statement and you consider the following assumptions, and then you find out and you basically have to answer this, that which of the assumptions are actually implicit in the question before you, in the statement before you. So the answer needs to be marked 1 if you think that only the first assumption is correct. It's B if only the second assumption is correct. It's C if either A or B. It's D if neither of the assumptions are implicit. And it's E if both 1 and 2 are implicit. These are merely the directions. However, do not pay less importance to these directions. Sometimes the questions can even mix and match directions C, D, and E. So do not take it for granted that either will be C in each of the questions and so on and so forth. Sometimes students do make that mistake, so don't do that. And now let's get to the question. So the first statement that we see here is detergents should be used to clean clothes. As simple as that. Assumptions. Detergents form lather. B. Detergents help to dislodge grease and dirt. Now look at the first statement. Detergents form lather. Do you think that this was really there in the mind of the author when he made the statements detergents should be used to clean clothes? I don't think so. Where does lather come into the picture? Has he even mentioned that in the statement? Has anything related to foam or lather been mentioned here, or is it necessary for such an assumption to be there in the mind of the author? No, I don't think so. So I don't think that assumption 1 is implicit over here. However, if you look at the second assumption, they help to dislodge grease and dirt. Now, what is the author saying? The author is saying the detergent basically cleans clothes, right? And so, if something can be used to clean clothes, it is very much implicit. It is very much, as you say, it goes unsaid. It is very obvious that it will help to dislodge dirt from clothes and grease from clothes. Hence, we can easily and reasonably conclude over here that while assumption A is not implicit, assumption B is. And hence, the answer to this question 1 should be B. That is, only assumption 2 is implicit. I hope it's making a bit sense for you guys. However, even if it is not, trust me, the more and more the questions you solve, the clearer this topic becomes. Let's move on to the next question. Second statement is, the government has decided to pay compensation to the tune of ₹1 lakh to the family members of those who are killed in railway accidents. Alright, fine. So there was a railway accident. The government has decided that they will pay 1 lakh to each and every family member. This is what the statement says. Let's read the assumptions. First, the government has enough funds to meet the expenses due to compensation. Again, remember the example that I just told you. If the government is making a statement of incurring an expense of amount X, it will not really make that statement unless it is somewhere down the line sure that it has the necessary resources to make that expense, right? Hence, assumption 1 is very much implicit. Look at assumption 2. There may be a reduction in incidents of railway accidents in the near future. Now look at this, guys. Does this have any relation with the statement which is given to you? The statement is not talking about, say, repairing the railway tracks, or say employing new staff, or say replacing the old tracks that are there, or anything of that sort. It is only talking about the compensation that will be paid to the family members who probably got injured or killed in the railway accident, killed here. So how can this be related to a reduction in the number of accidents in the future? This has absolutely nothing to do with that, right? However, if we twist the statement a bit and just think about it this way, if instead of the statement saying that the government has decided to pay compensation, suppose if the statement said that the government has decided to repair and replace all the old tracks that are there after the accident which happened last week. If this statement would have been there, then assumption 2 might have been implicit. Now, here is the catch. Here, because the question is assumptions, you do not really need to come to a conclusive answer that, all right, fine, if the government tracks will be repaired, then there will definitely be a reduction in the railway accidents in the future. No, this is not what an assumption question requires you to do. It only requires you to do what? To go into the mind of the author and then try to find what is he thinking. If today the government is saying that they want to repair the railway tracks, they are basically assuming that a repair of the railway tracks will lead to a reduction in the railway accidents in the future. Hence, if that would have been the statement that they have decided to repair the railway tracks, then assumption 2 would have been implicit. However, in the present question, only assumption 1 is implicit and assumption 2 is not. I hope the distinction between the two is clear for you guys. In case it's not, please rewind and rewatch the video. Now let's move on to the next question. Statement. I have not received telephone bills for 9 months in spite of several complaints. A telephone customer's letter to the editor of a daily said this. Alright. Assumption. Every customer has a right to get bills regularly from the telephone company. Now again, whose mind do you need to go into? You need to go into the mind of the customer who has sent the letter, because that is the person who is the author of this present statement. So if I am claiming something before you, if I'm claiming that, say, you owe me $100 and you need to give me $100, then it means that I have a right to get $100 from you. At least this is what is there in my mind when I ask for my $100 from you. It is only when I believe that I have a right to get it that I will ask for it from you. Hence, a valid assumption over here is the fact that the customer believes that yes, I am entitled to get the bill regularly from the telephone company, and hence, this sort of statement is being made before the editor of a daily. So assumption 1 is very much implicit. The next question. The customer's complaints point to a defect in the services which is expected to be corrected. Here again, what do you realize? That the customer is again asserting a right that the customer feels that he has, and that is why, because he has been deprived of this right, he expects that this is a defect which will be cured by the telephone company. Hence, in this statement, both assumptions 1 and assumptions 2 are implicit, and the answer will be E. I hope you all got this because this was quite a direct question. Next one. The management of XYZ Private Limited asked the workers' union to call off strike immediately, otherwise the management would be forced to close down the factory. Assumption 1. No alternative other than closing down the factory is left for the management of XYZ Private Limited. We'll get to this later because this is the more complex part. Let's read the next question. Next statement. Such threat may have some effect on the workers' union. So firstly, guys, think about the second assumption. If I am imposing any action on the workers, if I am asking the workers to do anything, what is the most basic assumption that is there in my mind? That yes, the workers will pay heed to my words, there will be some effect on the workers, and that they will listen to me. This flows from the very first example that I gave to you guys, that if today I'm speaking to you, the most basic thing that I'm assuming is that you guys are listening to me and are being able to comprehend whatever I'm saying. The same thing flows from this statement and assumption 2, which says that, yes, of course, if the management is asking the workers to do something, they are assuming that it will have some sort of an effect on the workers' union. Now come to statement 1. No alternative other than closing down the factory is left for the management of XYZ Private Limited. Is this implicit anywhere in the statement? You need to think from the perspective of the management of XYZ. Do they really take such a step, or do they really give such a warning to the workers only if there is a last resort? Is anything of this sort even mentioned in the statement? I don't think so. There is nothing in the statement which says that this is the last alternative. Now, you guys might say that it says that otherwise they will be forced to close down the factory, which shows that there is absolutely no alternative left. However, that's not the point here. The point here is that this management is simply asking the workers to stop it, else they will be forced to close down the factory. This is simply a tactic which is used by the management to force the workers to stop the strike and come back to work. Right? But there is absolutely nothing in the statement which talks about the alternatives present, or like what is the real ground level truth of the facts before the management, right? So in the present statement, only assumption B is implicit, but assumption A is not. And now we come to the last example. The advertisement reads, vitamin E tablets improve circulation, keep your complexion in a glowing condition. Now, guys, remember, this is one of the most typical assumptions questions that you will come across. If there is an advertisement, what is the purpose and the most basic purpose of an advertisement? That people really want the products that the advertisement is selling. The people really want the features that the ad is selling. That people will actually be attracted by the advertisement which is being made. Again, don't make the mistake of actually trying to see whether really people will be attracted or whether sales will really increase. We don't need to get to that. All we need to understand is what is there in the mind of the person who is making the advertisement. And again, what's the most basic thing? That people will be attracted, that people will probably purchase the goods, and so on and so forth. With this background, let's read the assumptions. People like a glowing complexion. Now, this advertisement is essentially selling a glowing complexion. It is saying that vitamin E tablets improve circulation and they keep it in a glowing condition, which essentially means that this advertisement maker assumes that people like and prefer to have a glowing complexion. So this is a very basic assumption, and I'm sure that you all agree with me that assumption A is implicit. Next one, complexion becomes dull in the absence of circulation. Again, read the statement. Vitamin E improves circulation and hence it keeps your complexion in a glowing condition. Assumption 2 also, in fact, flows directly from the statement, as it tells you that in case of improved circulation, you will have a glowing condition, and hence conversely, the author probably believes in the fact that if there is no circulation, then your complexion will become dull. With this, we come to the end of today's assumptions class. This is the most basic theory that you'll get for any assumptions. In this video, I would like to recommend the book of M.K. Pandey and R.S. Agarwal, along with all the other material that Catapult here is providing you with, in order to get the hang of these topics, especially topics like assumptions and conclusions, which are very subjective topics and require you to read between the lines and go more in depth, which is like more forward than what the bare text of the statement tells you. With this in mind, I hope you all enjoyed today's class. Thank you so much. All the best, everyone.